I am Sara Hassan. I'm a senior lecturer in software engineering at the Department of Computing and Data Technology, specifically in the Department of Computing and Data Science. If that all sounds like the same thing to you, that's absolutely fine. Today, I'm also wearing the hat of a STEAM House Fellow. So the work that I'm going to present to you today is kindly funded by the STEAM House Fellowship. So it's quite befitting that I'm presenting it inside STEAM House. So the theme for the session today is sustainability. And in that sense, my work does actually serve that theme. So I'm providing a STEAM contribution that serves higher education by helping to maintain and sustain the long-term mental well-being of students in STEM subjects. Now, why is this actually needed? Research has reported that over 1 in 3 STEM students suffer from clinical levels of anxiety and depression during their courses or beyond their courses. And that goes from higher education to basic education as well. So there is slight nuances about this result, but at a high level, there are high levels of clinical anxiety and depression reported across STEM students. One of the ways that this mental well-being issue manifests is something called techno-stress, which at a high level is the inability to cope with technology in a healthy way. And that can manifest in a number of ways. The ways of concern to me in this project can be long hours of using software that can affect their ability to cope with their day-to-day activities outside of using the software, or lack of confidence in using software, or lack of trust in the software just because we're getting conflicting messages from the software that they're using. So in that context, the problem that I'm addressing in this project is flipping things around. So instead of asking the software users to not use the software as much, which isn't reasonable to do, especially when you're talking about educational pieces of software that are integral to their degrees, instead I'm flipping things around and saying, how can the software be designed in a way so that it doesn't trigger as much techno-stress in the students when they use it for a period of time? And towards that, the contribution of this project is a framework for designing mental well-being aware software. Now, framework is a fancy word, but in reality, it's literally just some guidelines in order to improve the design of the software. And in my work, I'm using something called integrated development environments as the case study of the educational software. Integrated development environments, or IDEs for short, are pieces of software that are used by students who study computing, and they use it to practice programming. So my project is going to alter the design of these pieces of software in order to make them more techno-stress aware. So what is this framework made up of? It's made up of 2 parts. It's made up of a modeling language and software design guidelines. So in terms of, to make this a bit clearer, modeling language is like a map. The software design guidelines are like our route through this map. So the modeling language is going to basically show us the current status of the software, where the menus are being laid out, how the help buttons are, what messages do the students see, and so on and so forth. And then the software design guidelines are going to show us how we can alter these to make them more techno-stress aware, and therefore to sustain the mental well-being of the students. So as an example, having the error messages pop and flash in students' faces when they're desperate and they're trying to finish an assignment, that's not the best thing they can experience for their mental health, right? So these sort of things are going to be addressed by this framework. And thankfully, I've got a PhD student here with me who's going to be joining me on this journey. He's among the audience with us today. Now on to what is the current status of this framework. So first of all, thankfully, we've got the ethical approval. As you can imagine, the ethical approval for such a project that is going to involve participants from an early stage, and also it's going to study mental health and so on. So it takes a bit of time, but thankfully, we've got that done. Second thing is we've identified representative IDEs that we can use as case studies We've gotten down to 2 of them, and probably it's going to be narrowed down to 1. And we've also identified the user sample. So the user sample is going to be BCU students studying computer science courses, and as much as possible, they're going to be representative of the demographics of the department. And finally, I've made some steps towards a modeling language, a techno-stress-aware modeling language, which is the map, as I said earlier. So that would be showing what the IDE is laid out like, and maybe possibly annotate bits and pieces of the IDE to say if they're actually triggering any techno-stress. So a flashy error message would score high on the techno-stress scale. A helpful menu would score low on the techno-stress scale, depending on how the users perceive it. So what's next? Next is recruiting the user sample and profiling those users to have some sort of baseline for how much techno-stress they feel using the software in its current status. And then using that to create our baseline for the guidelines that we're going to use to improve the design of this IDE. And then finally, applying those guidelines, so going through the route in order to produce a well-being integrated IDE, or a WIDE for short. And finally, we're going to evaluate that either with existing users and or a fresh cohort of test users. So, to circle back, initially I said that I'm providing a STEAM contribution to serve higher education by sustaining the mental well-being of students. Now I can be more precise. I am providing a software design framework that serves existing educational software by altering its possible techno-stress levels in order to sustain the long-term mental well-being of students, specifically in STEM subjects in this case. Thank you very much.